bounce of the ball. This is West Tigers Talk. I'm your host, Rob A, as usual. And I've got my good friend from over at West Tigers, Westslife podcast to come over and have a chat to me about, what was speculation about Madge, but in the last hour has turned out to be speculation no more. Welcome along, Rob Bechara. How are you, mate?
Rob A and Rob B. Good to be here, mate. How are you?
And we're back together, Rob A and Rob B.
Yeah. In the right order, too.
Mate, yeah. So, like I said, I was going to get you on to talk about this speculation that's been brewing in the media about Madge, but as I just mentioned an hour ago, news broke. Madge is no more the head coach of the West Tigers. Shed a tear for Madge. I'm sure we're going to get right into it, but I've got a bit of a timeline I've put together, and then I'll just throw it over to you, your opinion on the sacking in that, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion about this kind of, I know I'll say theory, but I'm just putting some pieces together, like that crazy dude out of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's got that's conspiracy theory up on the wall thing. So so yesterday we'll start, actually we'll go to the off-season review, is where it all started. Madge was put under the pump after that poor performance against the Bulldogs at the end of last year. What resulted from that was Hardigan getting sacked. Sheen's ended up being promoted into his position, and Madge was safe, in inverted commas. The year started not too well, 0-5 start. We had them nice two back-to-back 1-point wins over the Parramatta and South, so good teams. But that followed up with two back-to-back losses, and then we had a win to the Dogs. So throughout all this, we've had a bit of media speculation. And also, Madge has been operating under, injury heavily affected season, thus far anyway. So we did get a few players back, and we put in a really poor second half performance against Souths in our last game that we played. And that just led to full-blown media speculation about Madge's future. Because as we know, and you've mentioned on your pod as well, that there was some kind of KPI put in there by the board at the start of the year about having to have double-digit points by the halfway point of the season, and obviously we haven't made it there yet. Only on 8 points, and we are at the halfway point of the season. So then brings us to yesterday. We have James Hooper, reporting that Madge's job is safe. 360 goes to air. Buzz Rothfield breaks the news that Madge is going to be sacked. He's coached his last game. He's most likely going to coach against Manly and then be sacked following that game. The reason they've taken so long is because Tim Sheens has been ill. Then you did mention this on the podcast last night, but there also managed to be a little segment when they came back from the ad break that Paul Kent did say that he called Madge in between the ad break, and he said that he'd been with Sheensy all day long. There hadn't been a whisper of any of this. He had no intention of going anywhere, and he was going to fight for his position. So that kind of put that speculation to bed on the air at the time. Quite odd. And then, that brings us to today, where we have Michael Maguire sacked just an hour ago. Your thoughts on the sacking, mate?
Where do I start, mate? It's just such a big, absolute big mess. Look, as I've said numerous times on Westlife podcast the last couple of weeks, I expected it to be Monday or Tuesday. I'm leaning towards Tuesday because of State of Origin being tomorrow. So you can only talk about it for a limited time. When you've got the biggest game of the year so far coming up, this is going to sort of drown all that Madge sacking noise out and take a little bit of heat off the club by the State of Origin. So basically for the next 48 hours, the club will escape. And then by then it really won't be, it'll be almost ancient news, by Thursday night, Friday morning. And then there'll be other games to watch and preview and what have you. And we might have kind of slide under the radar, so to speak. But I was actually messaging a mate today, and he goes, what do you think? And I just said, mate, I'm surprised he's not sacked today. But I really thought it wasn't going to happen because it had just been too quiet. But I actually said it really should have happened by today. I didn't expect it to happen later in the week because at the end of the day, the team has a game to, pardon my fingers moving, guys. I got messages coming through left, right and centre. I really didn't expect it to happen Thursday or Friday because we've got a game to prepare for. So when it didn't happen last week, I just said it had to happen Monday or Tuesday. How do I feel about it? I'm extremely disappointed. I understand the fans who'll say, look, Rob, he's had 4.5 years. He's, we've come 9th, 11th, 13th. We're sitting in 15th. I get all that. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but I do believe there are really extenuating circumstances for that. I believe he basically had to deal with a hamstrung salary cap where we really couldn't go out and get players. One of his faults has been that he can't attract players. I would counteract that and say, well, maybe he couldn't get those players because of who runs the club and who the administration are. Like, they don't exactly have a track record either. If Madge is deemed to have been a coach, and I don't believe this, but they say that he couldn't develop players. And as I've mentioned on Westlife, Luciano Leilua was half a game Artie when he was with St. George. He busts out 80 minutes.
I just lost the audio.
2019.
Back.
Yeah, sorry, mate. The phone rang. 2019, we had the best version of Ryan Madison that we've probably seen till the last month. I didn't think Jock Madden was a first grader at the start of the year. Look at him now; he's developed and he looks like he can manage a game and do some really good things. So I don't take that on board. They say that Madge couldn't delegate authority to other people around him. Well, he seems to have done that this year. All these things that Michael Maguire is allegedly not able to do, where was the club's due diligence on all that he trains his players too hard, that he can't develop players, that he doesn't delegate, et cetera, et cetera. So at the end of the day, Rob, if it's you and me, and even if we hire 3 or 4 dud people, and it's not, they just do a bad job no matter who we hire, at the end of the day, we've got to take a bit of blame for that and say, you know what, we're hiring the wrong people. Now, I'm not saying Madge was the wrong person. In fact, I think the club got it right by hiring him. I don't think there's anyone within that organisation that represents the West Tigers like him. I don't think any other coach could have worked under a board that didn't trust him, didn't back him. His focus was so driven and determined. And even as recently as last week, we can make a run home and win a lot of games. Like, he never wavered from his belief. He didn't play players like David Nofaluma to save his job, because he had his values and his morals set. And he thought, you know what, this guy didn't do the right thing by protocol. Love David Nofaluma. I've got no issue with him, but I'm just saying, in terms of his professionalism, he did a bad thing. And Madge didn't want to just cover his own ass and save his own job by playing him. He just said, you know what, this is the wrong thing for the club. He always looked to the future. He could have kept Benji Marshall last year, for example, and won a lot more games, and we would have been in a better position. And then where would we have been this year with no
would have been
Benji
to
Marshall?
the detriment of Luke Brooks's development. So he had to move him on. He understood how gun shy he was when Benji was around.
Rob, but Adam Dwayhe as well. Adam Dwayhe played 5'8" last year. Like, he wouldn't have got that year at 5'8" until he got injured. Exactly. So, Madge has always had a vision to the future. He's never had a great roster, but on top of not having a great roster, he inherited a bad roster. Adam Hartigan, I think, did a great job in terms of the roster management, getting rid of at least 5 guys that we can think of: Josh Reynolds, Chris McQueen, Ben Madalino, medically retired, Russell Packer, Mbai, who we're paying a bit of money for now. There's probably 1 or 2 that escape me at the moment. We got in a position for next year. Like, now, I've spoken to Simon Cook, for example, who's on the board. He said we're in a position to buy a marquee player for next year. And we've already got arguably the best back rower in Isaiah Papali'i coming. We've got a top 3 hooker in Api Coruscant coming. So the club's in a good position. And if you want to attract players, you've got to at least have stability. And this just throws everything. Now, I'm getting hysteria from fans in the last hour of saying certain players want out. It seems to be that the hard-working players within the club love Madge, and for want of a better term, the ones that want to take it easy or have a bit of a bludge are the ones who are a bit against Madge. And to be fair, the ones that were a bit against that, most of them aren't there now anyway. But it's just poor timing. I think we've done really well. I think our attack's improved. We couldn't score a try for a few games there, and now we seem to be able to run some shape really well and strip opposition teams of numbers. Our scramble defence is pretty good, although numerically our stats don't look good, Rob. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't have faith in this board as a whole. I'm not gonna single out. Like I said, I've just met Simon Cook, lovely guy. Don't know him really well, but he's only one voice of quite a few. But basically, it seems to me that from a financial point of view, the club are doing really good things now. In terms of football knowledge, they don't know what they're doing, and I know every business, Rob, has to change its position on the run, but the amount of chopping and changing we've done, we extended Madge prior to last year. Then we were going to sack him. Then we give him a stay of execution. Now we've sacked him. We sacked Tim Sheens 10 years ago. We hired him as head of junior pathways. Yeah. And 5 minutes later, he's head of football. And, we backed Jason Taylor over Farah years ago. And 6 months later, we sacked Taylor. I know for a fact Justin Pascoe said no to Benji Marshall in 2017 or whatever it was when Mitch Moses left, because I actually initiated contact with his manager and said, mate, give Pascoe a call. Like, if Mitch Moses is moving on, maybe Benji wants to come home. So his manager rang Pascoe up. Pascoe goes, his words, word for word, were we are going in a different direction. 4 months later, Benji Marshall was back at the club, signed. So it just shows, Rob, that everything we do, there's just no clarity. There's no sticking to a path. And as I said, you do have to change direction from time to time, but it's on every aspect of rugby league. We chop and change. Now, not that, some fans will say, well, who gives a stuff if we lose players when we're coming 15th? Are they that good anyway? But I think there's a potential of some guys were very close to Michael Maguire, and he's highly respected. And I think he did a great job given the amount of injuries we had this year. Sure, the South game was disappointing, but you can't be up every week. I mean, we should have been up for that week, but you just can't be up every single week. And I don't know, Rob, I'm still a little bit hurt or shocked. I mean, I was expecting it and bracing myself for it, but then when it didn't happen yesterday, I thought, you know what, just got to get through today, because they're not sacking him Thursday, Friday. And sure enough, bang, it just came out like that. I got a message on the Discord chat for Westslife podcast, and Madge is gone. I'm like, oh, great, here we go. So I feel really bad for Madge. I think he's done a great job under trying conditions. I really do. I mean, the results aren't there, but sometimes that's just how the apples fall. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. My big issue at the moment, when I'm just thinking about the whole thing and putting it in perspective, I'm like, what's the point of doing it right now? If they were going to do it at the start of the year. If not, wait till the end of the year. Give the bloke a chance to at least make that run to the 8. And if you can't do it, say, we're sorry, Madge. We expected the 8 this year at least. When, in realistic terms, that was probably an improbability anyway, especially with injuries. And, and that's the other thing. In context of everything that he's had to go through, so let me get this straight. Pascoe, did he fire Potter?
Potter, I don't think was actually.
He was already
fired.
at the
club. Potter's contract just was like it just ran its 2-year course, so it just expired. Okay. So he was never renewed. The club will always get you on a technicality and say we've only ever sacked 2 coaches. I mean, obviously Cleary walked out. So they sacked Sheens, they sacked Taylor. That was it. Now they've sacked Madge. So that's 3. But Rob, I kind of respectfully
disagree. Did Pascoe have anything to do with the sacking of Sheens?
No, Pascoe wasn't there. Pascoe was there. He was hired, I think, in September, October of 2015. I met him. Things were very, very cordial to begin with, Rob. And basically within 18 months, I just realised respectfully the bloke's full of shit. And he was like contacting me. And he was contacting not just me, he was contacting dozens of fans to sit in his office. And when you talk to him about rugby league, he'd be like, oh, look at my centre of excellence. This is what I'm proposing. And the guy just had no footy now, and he was trying to cover it by, changing the subject and talking about other matters. So, but I think as a club, Rob, we should have kept Madge for 18 months or sack him 6 months ago. If you were going to move on, I don't know what this does now. Like, if they'd have I'll be honest, I wanted Madge to stay, but if they were going to sack him, I'd rather they sack him now than at the end of the year. Keep him for 18 months or cut the cord now, because you can't be performing with, a gun at your head. It's not good for the team. It's not good for the coach. He still wouldn't have had his new players yet next year. So I don't think it's fair. He just needed to be told, see out your contract and do the best you can. But I have zero faith in this board, Rob, and I can't. I mean, I've been known for having a bit of a grudge against them as a whole, but they are dumb. They are literally the dumbest board
They are.
that,
They are.
at least in the bottom three that I've.
Like you've mentioned just before, like they've picked the perfect time. They've waited for this. They've like, oh, this is perfect in between Origin and the fiasco that's happening over there at the Warriors. That's a bit of a laughing stock. They'll look like kind of credible for once by being a bit decisive with the decision, even though they've been completely indecisive with it for the last 6 months. And then it gets washed under the rug as Origin flows, tomorrow night. So, like you said before, they're good at the business side and the PR side of the thing, but I just feel like there's two factions at play here, and they've brought Tim Sheens in to be kind of like a scapegoat in a sense. Like, of course, like they're saying that he's the one who's in charge of football now, but it appears that Sheens' advice wasn't followed on this occasion, and the board's voted to get rid of Madge regardless. Have you got any
I'm not
insight
sure of
into
that, Rob. Yeah, no, I have got a bit of insight into that. I would say that the board, by respectfully, like it's not even respectful, no matter how I say it. I'm trying to be nice, but I can't be. The board doesn't have rugby league nous. They don't have knowledge. So I believe
they've hired Sheens with the nous to make the decision. Then they're not taking his advice.
Correct. I believe they don't have any knowledge like rugby league knowledge, and they put all their faith in Tim Sheens. And I'm very sure Tim Sheens has the view that Michael Maguire can't develop players, and he's always distanced himself from the team all year. He's never been, really putting his hand in terms of selection or anything like that. He's really kept his distance, so he can't be blamed for any of the losses. And I believe they're going with whatever Tim Sheens said. So, and this mid-season review is an absolute.
Do you think it is the other way around?
Well,
you think
Tim Sheens has
the
been
one wielded the axe here?
He works there. This isn't like you or me, Rob, going in there and doing a forensic examination of a mid-term review and checking what everyone's doing. Tim Sheens is there on a day-to-day basis, and he sees what's going on. So you can't tell me that, he's just going to go around and do an investigation. His mind was made up. I spoke to someone last week who, I'll let people try and put two and two together. I'm not going to say who it was, but he got invited to Tim Sheens to the Canterbury game. He sat next to him at the Canterbury game. He never said anything that Tim Sheens told me, but he basically said, Rob, Madge is gone. Now, if he sat next to Tim Sheens all game, discussed with Tim Sheens a lot of rugby league stuff, and then came out of it and told me that Michael Maguire is going to be gone, well, then obviously, he's got that from Tim. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work that out. So I kind of knew all along that was going to happen. The only thing that was going to save Madge was to probably get three, maybe 4 wins in a row starting. Well, it would have been 5 wins in a row if you include Canterbury, but we needed to beat South. Because even what's been publicly said, Rob, is, Michael Shamus revealed, I think, originally that we had to be on 10 points by the halfway mark of the year. And once we lost to South, that wasn't achievable, unfortunately. So, but look, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of like dying a second death with Madge, because I kind of felt like I'd lost him 6 months ago. I felt like he was, even basically gone last week. So I've been prepared for the worst, so to speak. I mean, look, it's only a job, but I just think he put his heart and soul into it. Whether he's was the right man for the job or not, well, I guess time will tell with who we pick next, Rob. But that's another question altogether, isn't it? Hopefully the Tigers have got who they want and it's the right person.
Yeah, so we've got Kamali seeing us out for the rest of the year. I just found it odd in the last couple of weeks how it felt like there was two factions working in the front office, one pro-Madge and one anti-Madge, with the way that the media leaks were coming out, because they juxtaposed at each other, man. They were contradictory. They didn't make sense. There. You know what I mean?
I think you're right there. I've heard for a fact they were divided, and that's probably why Madge got that stay of execution 6 months ago. But But I've had chats. Like I spoke to Lee Hadjipentalis probably 2 weeks before Madge got the stay of execution, and the one thing that he kind of harped on, which, like I said, was very simplistic, but he just said, Rob, we've come 9th, we've come 11th, we've come 13th, we've gone backwards. And then I kind of threw a question at him. I said, Lee, with all due respect, do you think we're going to finish better than 13th in 2022? And he goes, I'd like to think so. And I said, mate, you've got Buckley's. I said, have you looked at that squad? I said, have you seen how many guys in that top 30 have had less than 20 games? And then after that, have you seen how many have had 50 or 60 games? We've got no stars in that team. We were taking a punt on Jackson Hastings, who's turned out to be a godsend. We've had our best player last year, Adam Dwayhe, out.
I was raving about him last year. I told you guys. I was watching him. I knew he was a godsend.
And Dane Laurie coming back from injury, Rob. So, he was arguably our second best player. Like, a lot of people couldn't split him and Adam last year. So I just said to Lee, like, how do you expect to be better? I said, what I'd like to see is the squad develop and you guys add some players to it. But I said, you've got to give this guy a couple of years or cut him now. I said, you just can't be giving him another 6 months. And as I said, if we'd have kept him on and said, you know what, you got till the rest of the year, then what? Then if we lose to Manly or we lose to Canterbury or we lose to New Zealand, the drums will beat again. Like, you just got to have a vision, guys. You got to say, is this the right guy or not? And obviously they didn't think he was, but I don't think they know what the right guy or the wrong guy is anyway. They'll be doing hoops to try and get Seraldo, who time will tell how that goes. But I don't know. I don't know how you need a first grade coach to be a development coach. The development comes from before they land in first grade. That's what Nathan Cleary inherited. So are they hiring Seraldo to be a Jersey Flegg coach or a New South Wales Cup coach, like where the players come from? I mean, by the time they get to first grade, they need to be ready-made players. Like, you look at Penrith, you see Taylor May and Targo, like the centre and the winger there. They just came in and went boom, like they never missed a beat. You wouldn't think that they lost Matt Burton last year or Brian Tyler for the first half of the season. So, that development has to come from before you get to first grade. And when you get to first grade, you're ready to play. Bang, away you go. And I don't know how we get that with a guy being in top grade. If he's there for the development, well, he's not really developing anyone. They've got to come to first grade ready-made. So
I don't get the argument to someone else at the club to be overseeing, not the first grade coach, like you said. So
yeah, exactly. Well, maybe he could be doing, like the junior pathways down the track with, that Betsy and Kamali are meant to be running. So yeah, I'm not sure, mate. I like I say, I try and get as much information as I can, but ultimately I'm not on the inside, so I'm only taking other people's word for it. But look, it's another shaky time again. It seems like we're going to be starting with at least another 2 or a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, and whatever happens the rest of this year or the rest of next year, Seraldo or Flanagan or whoever it is, he's only had 6 months. He's only had 18 months, and we start that whole narrative again. So I just think there's a lot of fans that are frustrated, Rob. I don't know how long they're going to put up with it for. And yeah, it's just really, really disheartening. And as a Westslife podcast, like Josh, Shane and myself, we're kind of like Dear Ruth. We're trying to keep the fans upbeat and trying to give them hope. And then
you're going to go to the dark side soon, mate.
Mate, I keep saying to the boys, who's going to give us our therapy? Like, we're trying to be really, and they're great listeners, they're great fans, they're always interacting with us. I'm always interacting with them on Twitter and what have you. It's great. Like, I love the kind of Westslife family that we got, but it's just frustrating. Like, at the end of the day, they're just going to call you out and say, Josh, Rob, Shane, you guys are full of shit. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, what's going on? But I see some good things, mate. I see the signings we've made. I see like a Jersey Flegg team that was undefeated last year, a Harold Matt's team, or that was undefeated or won the comp this year. There's a lot of good kids coming through, and you just can't keep chopping their head coach off, especially a good man like Michael Maguire. Like, maybe put the people around him, which they seem to have done.
About the culture of your club. It's very reflective of the culture of your club, obviously. And I was happy with what I was seeing this year. You could see it was finally rubbing off, that diehard attitude, that wanting to win. You know what I mean? Like, you could see it in the players throughout the majority of the year. They had a bad second half in the last game that was played. I know, in light of everything else that's happened in the last 3 years, it looks bad and it's just compounded onto everything else that's happened. But in the context of the season, it was like you said last week on the pod. Shit, they're allowed to have a bad day. Like, they're human beings.
That's
And
what they've been up for so long, Rob.
it's I just can't. It's a cruel gig, mate. Yeah, I feel for him. My problem is that there's nothing else out there. I can't see any other coach available on the market who could have done any better with the same cards that was dealt to Michael Maguire over the course of his tenure at the club.
100%. I could not agree more. And Michael Maguire was actually blessed that he inherited Benji and Robbie, who one of the good things Ivan Cleary did was to get both of those guys back to the club. And I swear to this day, if Farah doesn't get injured against Canterbury late in the year, we make the finals. Like, I've got no doubt in the world on that. Not only do we win a Canterbury game that week, we would have beaten Manly the following week, and we might not have even needed to beat Cronulla in the final round to make the 8. So I really do believe, we copped a cruel bit of fate there in Robbie Farah getting injured. But on the defence, Rob, like a lot of the fans will say, we've leaked, so many points per game, et cetera, et cetera. How I like to try and look at it further, 2 of our poorer games were round 2 against Newcastle and round 5 against Cronulla. Now, we could not have played worse in the first half against Cronulla. Like, we literally just kept turning the ball over, against Newcastle, turning the ball over. They scored a couple of fluky tries, and the game was pretty much over shortly after half time, but we didn't capitulate. We kind of held it to roughly 20-0 or 24-0, whatever the scoreline was. Now, the old Tigers would have lost 50-0. And it was the same with Cronulla. I remember Toa dropping a ball, hit like Dane Laurie had got COVID shortly before the game, but like Toa just had to play fullback all of a sudden on no notice. David Nofaluma dropped a ball. I think Kemba Marlowe dropped a ball. And we were down by a mile at half time, and the game only ended up 30-4 or 30-6, or like with a Kenny Mamalo intercept right at full time. But they're the sort of games that previous bad Tigers teams would have had 50 or 60 put on them. And so even though you see like big score lines, if you just picked up the score and saw, 20-odd-0 or 30-something-4, you'd just say, oh, well, where's the improvement? But if you actually watch the game, you think, well, hang on, the old team wouldn't have scrambled like that. And people will just say, you're clutching at straws, or you're just trying to look at the positive, but it's actually the truth. Like, you can tell when a team's having a go. If they were really turning it up, they'd have 50 or 60 put on them. Like the Melbourne game last year when we lost 66-16 or thereabouts. So it was something like 50-0 at half time, and they scored a few tries shortly after half time. They literally weren't putting any effort. It looked like a touch footy game. I haven't seen that this year. So I don't know, man. Everyone, you know what? The funny thing is, Rob, with all the fans whinging, if somehow we beat Manly this weekend, no one will give a shit. Like, they'll just say, good move, glad he's gone, et cetera, et cetera. So let's hope we can get a positive out of it.
And the entirety of the last 3 years and in context of it all just be washed away, and Madge's kind of reputation will be tarnished in a sense.
Yeah, no, that's right. But that's the simplicity of the rugby league fan, isn't it? Like, they really, don't give a shit about anything else except wins and losses. So, which obviously it's the most important thing, but you just got to be a little bit of a realist. Like, I don't know. Let's just see who they get in, Rob. That's my, we just got to make sure there's a couple of coaches that they definitely don't get. Geez, they get
one
Nathan
will
Brown.
Send me. One will actually 2 now. 2 will actually send me.
Who's the
other second one became available this morning. But
yeah, Nathan Brown you're talking about?
Yeah. Oh, fuck. Jesus.
Well, who's the first one? Who's the first one that'll bother you?
Oh, Flano. I'm just not down for that, mate. I'm
not you might have to get ready, mate, because my mail is, if we don't get Serraldo, we will be getting Flanagan.
Yeah, that's what I'm anticipating. That when you said that he was at the speaking to Sheen to the Bulldogs game the other day, penny dropped a bit. I'm like, oh, shit. Flano hangs around them a lot.
No, what the Flano? It wasn't Flano. No, I don't know Flano.
Yeah, I know, but like Flano does hang around there a lot, watching young Kyle, and that would mean I could just see so many moving pieces. Yeah, that's another rant and another therapy session to have later.
That would be, there'd be no therapy, mate. Like, they'll burn down the centre of excellence. I'm telling you. Literally, the Tigers fans will do what they did. They'll do what they did to Cumberland Oval in 1981 when Para won their first premiership. We'll just go burn the place down. Like,
Mate,
seriously, it
I'll
just,
be there with my pitchfork and petrol.
there's only so much you can take, Rob. Like, honestly, like, it's just, honestly, like, I shouldn't be laughing. I should be crying. I really should.
I'll be like, if Pascal doesn't
It's,
resign now, I'm burning this shit down. That's how it's feeling to me. Yeah.
well, when does he become accountable, mate? When does he? He's been there 7 years. Mad was there 3.5 years. Pasco's been there double that time. He's the one that signed those 4 or 5 blokes that I said. He's the one that mucked up the Robbie Farah ambassadorship that cost us, fines of 600 odd grand and salary cap space. He never gets made accountable for anything, mate. Absolutely anything. The coaches he's hired, the players he's hired, the mess he's made. But, you know what? We're showing a profit, so everything's roses. It doesn't work like that, mate. You need a CEO that understands both sides of the business, not just the financial side. And I'm telling you, Rob, they're going to lose some sponsorship. They're not going to keep all their sponsors. Eventually, you can only sell shit for so long. If we keep finishing down near the bottom and the way we're perceived by the NRL world, you just can't keep flogging a dead horse. So I think his time comes up. And honestly, we need a bit of a clean sweep out of there, Rob. We need just a bit of a fresh look. Hypothetically, even if Justin Pascoe is doing a good job now in the sponsorship area, there's still the stigma that he's a CEO.
Thank you very much. Thank you for leaving the club in a better financial position. We're still dealing with the scars of what you had, your fingerprints on the football department. So see you later. Have a nice career wherever you're going. We need
exactly
fresh blood
right.
just
Exactly.
like the coaching staff.
Yeah, so. No, exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay, then, mate. We'll leave it at that then. Everyone, they're going to be jumping on air for a emergency episode tonight. So make sure you head over to YouTube and go see Rob and the rest of the boys over there at Westslife Podcast when they go on air at 8:30 tonight. Yeah,
it's a bit of a event pod too, Rob. So if anyone wants to ring in, you're welcome yourself to have a ring in as well.
Yeah, I just got the message back from Josh Chen, so I will see you there, my friend.
All right, buddy. It should be a long one, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Okay, thanks, mate.
Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate your time.
All the best.
Thanks.
Anytime, buddy. Bye, mate.
See you, mate.